Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for a live screening of The MILKMAID. The MILKMAID is Nigeria's official entry for the 2021 Academy Awards, and we're going to run the entire film directly here through the webinar. The film runs 136 minutes, so about 2 hours and 16 minutes. And as soon as the film ends, we're going to go directly into a live Q&A with writer, director, producer Desmond of Ovbiagele, the executive producer, Seun, Sowemimo, and the lead actress, Anthonieta, Kalunta. When we get to the Q&A, you're welcome to ask questions in the Q&A box that we have here in Zoom. But we do things in a bit of a unique way. If you haven't been to one of our webinars before, we actually really like to invite people who ask questions over to the panelist side so that you can turn on your video and your mic and ask the question live. You don't have to do that. If you don't want me to bring you over, just put a note in the question that you write saying that you'd rather have me read it. So The MILKMAID is a very unique film out of Nigeria, and I wanted to invite Dayo Ogunyemi, who is a producer at 234 Media, who is really the person that we can all thank for organizing this with us, and he'll give you a little bit more of a sense of what's in store. Over to you, Dayo.
Thanks, Alex, and we are really grateful to you and all the folks at USC Cinematic Arts for this opportunity. As many of you will know, Nigeria is home to the world's second or third largest film industry, and as such is a bellwether for the future prospects of African cinema. The MILKMAID is a very unique film because unlike most of the Nigerian films that many of you might be familiar with, it's not Nollywood, which is primarily English language. It's the MILKMAID was shot is primarily in Hausa with some Fulfulde and Arabic, and it's really, in my view, it's a huge step up and statement on the part of Nigerian cinema, and you guys will get a chance to see it, and we'll, I guess, all meet up at the Q&A afterwards.
Thank you so much, and please enjoy the show, and please stick around for the discussion to follow. Thank you so much for joining us for the Q&A. Let me just make sure that I've got everyone. I'd like to welcome on the writer, director, producer, Desmond Ovbiagele, the executive producer, Seun Sowemimo, and the lead actress, Anthonieta Kalunta. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I wanted to just quickly start by asking a little bit about the individuals that you dedicate the film to at the end, and a little bit about sort of the personal history that you might have with this story.
Oh, thank you very much. This is Desmond, the director. Nice to meet you. Well, around the time that we were about to start shooting the film, there was a media report about an attack on a village somewhere in Borno State in Nigeria, where a number of aid workers were taken captive by the insurgents. And it was particularly poignant because for the first time, you actually had live audio of actually what was going on, because one of the aid workers was actually recording the attack. I was actually speaking on the phone to a friend while the attack was taking place, and the friend was recording. And she was sounding terrified, and saying that she was very concerned that her parents would be very angry with her because they didn't know she was in the village doing this humanitarian work. And then the audio cut off once the insurgents breached the building where she was. And her name was one of the names that you have on the memoriam there. I believe she and another lady were working for the Red Cross. And then, so that was when we were just about to start shooting the film. We finished shooting the film, and a couple of months after, we received the news reports that both ladies had been been shot dead by the insurgents, where they were taken captive, despite appeals by the government and other international agencies. They were still killed. So it was something that certainly inspired us, particularly as we were going through post-production, and we felt very, very strongly that we needed to acknowledge them, in the film.
Desmond, your audio is it's going in and out a little bit in terms of the volume. It's not dropping out, but it's sort of going back and forth between being loud and quiet. I don't know if
okay.
Anyway, speak into the mic a little bit more directly.
Okay. I'll try that. I'll try to move a bit closer.
So earlier, Dayo did an introduction to sort of how this film is unique within the context of film production in Nigeria. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the origins of the story and deciding to make a film that, it wouldn't be in English, that it would film in locations that were a lot more challenging to film in, for safety reasons and probably some political reasons as well. So give us a sense when you were writing the film, how you made those decisions.
Well, to be fair, when I was writing the script, I just wrote the script. My focus, during that process was just trying to come up with a narrative that represented, the characters and the stories and accounts and experiences of the survivors that came out of the research. And so once that process was concluded, then the question was, where to shoot the film. For logistical and convenience reasons, I was quite tempted to shoot it in southern part of the country where I'm based. But that certainly wouldn't have lent an authentic visual look, to the characters in the setting of that kind of story. And so despite the fact that, yes, it was going to involve a degree of inconvenience and also a degree of risk, we took, a production decision that we needed to shoot the film as close as possible to the theater of conflict.
Seun, you have a completely different career coming into being the executive producer of this film. Can you tell us a little bit about your own sort of motivation for wanting to have the ability to actually make something of artistic importance that also has great social relevance?
Yeah, thanks, Alex, for having us all here. So my motivation, I've always been interested in the arts. In fact, my inclinations in my early years from high school were mainly artistic, probably even more than Desmond at the time with the kind of subjects that I actually took. But, also in high school, it was the professions that were favored. You could only say you were going into medicine, or engineering or accountancy, or you were going to be a lawyer, that sort of thing. But those interests were still there in the arts. And as time went on, even in my career right now, the importance of what was going on in Nigeria and in that portion of sub-Saharan Africa with the insurgency was really kind of top of mind, and how it had disappeared from the news after, the whole Chibok girl saga, with the involvement of stars on this side, of the world had sort of died down. But we knew that these things were still continuing. There was the Dapchi girls, then there was, after that, more recently, the Kankara boys, just 1 week after, this movie's submission to the Oscars was announced. So that ongoing, problem was what prompted me when I read the script from Desmond to say that, listen, this is a story that is about Africans that needs to be told, and better by Africans, so that we can, treat it with the kind of sensitivity that it deserves, and also balance the story you know, with some of the positives that we have in Africa, you know, hence the showing of the, you know, the beautiful Hausa Fulani culture, and showcasing also of the, you know, the beautiful landscapes that we have in the country.
Sadly, of course, the lack of visibility, you know, of these crimes in the news, in the global news, is sort of feeds into the exact act of terrorism they're preparing right at the end, because there needs to be something that's going to shake the world. So I mean, it is curious that something ongoing like this was so present, I think, in our collective global consciousness, and then it sort of receded. So I guess with the film representing Nigeria at the Oscars, what sorts of things are you doing to raise awareness for the issue in addition to the film itself?
Well, you know, we're limited because, you know, we don't have that big a platform. But the tool that we have here is the film. And if the film makes a deep run and gets some prominence, you know, then a bigger platform would be given for these issues, you know, as the film progresses. However, it also shaped the sort of path and the journey that the film has taken. You know, this film was first shown at a private screening at the UN, and that was under the sponsorship of the Spotlight Initiative, which is, you know, a collaboration between the UN and the European Union, which has put 600 million euros towards ending violence against women and girls by 2030. So it sort of colored the journey of the film. And, you know, part of that, you know, journey is definitely going to be one of advocacy for the cause. And we're hoping that this reaches, you know, not just people who are involved in this sort of advocacy, but also reaches the general public, you know, the everybody of every sphere of activity in the world, so that, you know, everyone can be aware, and those who need to do something about this sort of issues, you know, are prompted to do so.
So this is Anthonieta's film debut, screen debut, and it's an incredibly powerful performance. So I'd like to talk a little bit about getting the role, auditioning for the role. I read that there was, you know, some casting changes along the way, and I'd love to know, when you first got the script, when you were reading through the characters, you know, when you were reading through the character, what kinds of things you brought in that, you know, impressed Desmond and, you know, sort of allowed the production to move forward with someone who was making their first film?
I believe the very first thing was that Aisha had lots of lines. And one thing I remember most people on set were impressed with me for was my ability to get my lines in a very timely manner. And that's kudos to the fact that I'm from a stage background. Yeah. I have a degree in theater and performing arts, so I'm good with lines. We learned to, you know, have our lines on time. So everyone was always impressed. And also the delivery of the lines, which is another thing I learned from my stage background, the delivery of my lines and getting my lines in a timely manner. And then when it comes to the acting, director Desmond has a vision in his head, and he has what he wants for each character. So most times is the ability to get it the way he envisioned. So most times he's waiting for you, he gives you tips and tricks, or sometimes he just says, do it the way you feel she should come out. And then he says, oh, that was great, that was great. So yeah, lines, I believe the lines. And then also the first AD, no, the focus puller, that was Andre. He was also impressed with me hitting my marks, because it was a thing for him. Hit your marks, please. And yeah, I got to do that, so it was great.
So these sorts of situations that tear apart families, that cause so much pain and trauma, and then unfortunately also create the situation that we see depicted in the film where family members even turn against each other. It's such an incredibly strong statement about the ways in which you get indoctrinated into this way of life. And I'm curious if there, in the research for the film, how much time, if you had any time to speak with survivors directly to really sort of get a sense of what that world was like. And it's both for you, Anthonieta, and also Desmond. I'm curious to know what the research process was in terms of what life was actually, what life is actually like in this situation.
Well, I did speak to a couple of survivors, and it was entirely the accident. As I mentioned earlier, I happen to live in the southern part of the country, and we had always thought that we were very far removed from the conflict, from the crisis, which is in the northern part of the country. But I was surprised to find that you're right across the road from where I stay in Lagos. I discovered that there was actually a settlement of some of these refugees who had actually made their way down from the northern part of the country and were, sort of just, staying there, being extorted for money by the local youth there, for rental space of some, little patch of ground where they could build a booth with sticks. And were there just trying to recover the fragments of their lives, unreported, undocumented, no sense as to what they have been through and what hell they might have been going through. So I spoke to a couple of them. I think one of the things that struck me was, and I think we tried to show this through the character of Aisha probably most, was really the resilience of some of these people. You take a look at them, you wouldn't know that they had experienced such horrors in their lives. I mean, they don't necessarily smiling from ear to ear, but they were trying to get on as best they could. They weren't feeling sorry for themselves. There's just such incredible resilience, particularly on the part of the women. And I was struck that you could have people so close to you and have no inkling as to what horrors they had gone through. And many of them had escaped on the back of trucks with surviving members of their families and made their way down to the south. Just for refuge, but obviously after reaching the south, zero support in terms of trying to reintegrate them back into the society, in terms of rehabilitating them emotionally and psychologically. So they're just, which is their situation. But in addition to that, obviously needed to do a whole ton of research. Reading the accounts of survivors, accounts produced by various newspapers and AIDS agencies, just talking about, people who had been in this crisis, whether they were victims or they were former perpetrators who had repented and turned themselves in, but just needing to immerse myself in the world of these people, both perpetrators and victims, to try and come up with a narrative that was authentic, and that was important for me. It needed to be true, So that was what I went through in terms of research.
Anthonieta, was there any kind of direct research possible for you in terms of meeting people that had been through this?
Well, in terms of teams themselves, direct contact, but I have access to lots of videos, lots of information, because those were topics or issues we had to address even in school during development programs and community theater. So I was aware of lots of video materials, lots of written materials, articles, and things people had written about them, and some interviews with victims themselves, but I didn't meet any victim beforehand. After shooting the film, I had the opportunity to meet people.
I had read that it was kind of complicated to shoot in the locations that you were working in because of its proximity to Boko Haram and also sort of the local governance needing to, I guess, give their stamp of approval. Can you talk a little bit about what the experience was of actually shooting the film in terms of that, Desmond?
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, we didn't we didn't go all guns blazing in terms of disclosing exactly what sort of film we're shooting. So essentially, we essentially got in there. I just said we're shooting a traditional film, Hausa language, and I guess just slowly over the course of time, it started to seep through that, oh, this was a film about extremism. So we didn't go in there, with entirely full disclosure, but just give them a sense that this was a story about two sisters, and that was it. So there was that part of it. In addition to that, obviously, you're shooting in a location where in communities that have actually been victims themselves of attacks of one form or the other. So certainly there was a degree of nervousness by the time they saw us bringing out our costumes and props and staging the scenarios there. That, what are you guys shooting here? And we had to tiptoe around some of those sensitivities, do of course a lot of explaining that we weren't demonizing anybody. We're just trying to tell a story that's going on, in the country and all of that. And eventually they got comfortable with it. It helped the fact that we're bringing such a big production to the state that they had never seen such magnitude of production before, and they were very keen to be a part of it and to learn, from the production process. So that helped to soothe, any concerns or anxieties. But certainly there were constraints in terms of where we could shoot and what time of the day we could shoot. In addition to anxieties and concerns about the nature of the film, we also had to pander to the culture of the places they were shooting in. They had their own traditional rites. So on some certain days we couldn't actually shoot in the villages because of traditional rites that typically took place on those days, which obviously disrupted our shooting schedule a bit. And there are also places where we couldn't shoot because they happened to be sacred places, for their ceremonial rites and all that. So needing to navigate our way through, some of those elements, was interesting, and made the production perhaps a bit more challenging than it normally would have been.
I'm curious about how you chose to write Dagana, was that the character's name, the male lead? Because
Dagana, yes.
It would be, it would obviously be easy to write this character that, they're desperate to get away from, but instead you chose a much more nuanced approach to have someone who does show a lot more sensitivity to the needs of his wives, and sort of, towards the end, it really does come forward when they decide to leave together, that there's an actual relationship there. And I found that to be a really interesting choice. It made the character far more compelling. And I'd love to hear about your thoughts for how that, how you were going to write that character.
Well, I think that's interesting. I mean, and obviously we wouldn't, hold out that all the insurgents are like Dangana, most definitely not. But certainly as a product of research, one of the things I found intriguing in the accounts of the survivors was how the abductors related to them once they had taken them to their camp. Not necessarily a relationship of master and servant. To some extent, the abductors, wanted to win them over. But I mean, they brought them by coercion, but they wanted to win them over, by persuasion and by conviction. So they sought to reach out to them. They sought to humanize themselves. To show that, hey, we're just like you, we're in your situation, we're also ignorant, and we've seen the light, and here is the light, and please come over to the light. And in addition to that, also romantically, these were many of them young men, who didn't grow up as perpetrators, and crossed over to the other side. But they still, wanted these girls, particularly the younger ones among the women abducted, to like them, for who they were. As much as, from the outside, you'd see them and say, hey, this is just a terrible thing. You guys are monsters. But they don't see themselves as monsters. And they didn't want the girls to see them as monsters either. They wanted them to actually like them. So you read accounts of them being nice to them, buying them, exotic fruits that these girls normally wouldn't have gotten probably in their own residential locations, in their homes, getting them jewelry in some cases from Dubai and places like that. So actually going out of their way to appeal, to them. And you wouldn't have thought that would be necessary. I mean, you have guns, you have all the powers of coercion at your disposal, but that wasn't entirely true. And we we wanted to also bring that side, of, because I think, that attitude actually makes the brainwashing and, indoctrination even more potent, on the part of the terrorists themselves.
Mm. What were the biggest surprises that you discovered in your research that filled in the details of the world? From, obviously you chose an appropriate and evocative location, but, also sort of like the structure and organization of Boko Haram?
I think one of the things that struck me was how, to some extent, they actually divided in their leadership in terms of their ideology. They don't all have, the same mindset, the same philosophy. Some of them are far more focused. As to an extent, we try to show with Dangana in the story, in terms of, this is a war in which we shoot against government largely. Attacks and targets should be the military and military installations and all that. And that's one mindset. And another mindset are those who feel, hey, everyone's an infidel, everyone is fair game, no one is sacrosanct, and everyone should be attacked. And sometimes those divisions are very, very sharp. And as the research proved, in a lot of cases, similar to Dangana in the film, the dissenting factions can actually get eliminated, by those who feel that they are not playing to the hardline stance of the ultimate leadership.
I'm seeing some questions coming in, and I want to be able to welcome some people over to say hi and turn on their video and ask their question live. So I'm going to call on Dayo to get started, and then I will put a sort of running order of who I'll go to next, and then you're welcome to address your questions to any specific guest or to the whole group. So Dayo, I'm going to move you over now. And while that's happening, I'll just also say, I'll move some people over in advance so that we don't lose too much time with this process. But if I do move you over, just keep your camera off until I call on you. All right. Hello. How are you?
Alex, it's good to see you again, man. It's been a minute.
I know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. Let me just begin by congratulating you guys, Desmond, Dayo, Seun, and Anthonieta. This is fantastic. I mean, you guys did such a marvelous job with this. I'm really so proud of you. My name is Bayo Akifemi. I'm an adjunct associate professor of film directing here at USC. I'm also an actor and director. If you've seen the show Bob Hats Abishola, I'm one of the series regulars. So I'm based out here. And to just see what you guys have, brought here today, it fills me with a lot of pride and a lot of joy. So congratulations. The question that I have for you is, I read somewhere that the Nigerian Film and Video Censors Board, they gave you guys a lot of hassles in terms of asking you to, edit the film, cut stuff out. So I was just kind of curious how you were able to navigate those challenges, and if that has any influence on the version of the film that we just saw, and if we're ever going to see the director's cut, so to speak, because that's the one I really want to see.
Yeah, sure. I think I can allow you to take that.
Yeah, so this is the stunning thing. The version you're seeing is the original version.
Oh, okay.
So your statement, lends itself to the fact that there was not really anything severe that needed to be cut.
Okay.
However, because of the peculiar sensitivities, and it's still stunning to me.
Right.
Even the version you just saw was what was severely cut. So
Nigeria.
Yes, in Nigeria. So what they're seeing has at least a quarter of an hour less.
Less. I see. So the version being shown in Nigeria is the one that's different. All right, well,
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I get to see the real, the real deal, the way you guys intended for it to be, because I know as a filmmaker, it can be a pain in the rear end, when a bunch of these people, honestly, in my opinion, I had some interactions with them years ago when I went back and tried to do some project. And to me, these guys have no right to ask filmmakers to cut their films. Their job is to rate movies, just rate it, If you want, to get PG-13 rating, this is what you do. If you want R rating, this is what you do. Give me the rating that I want and let me move on. Don't be cutting my film. Anyways, I don't want to monopolize the time. If you guys come to LA, it will be an honor to host you. Please, please look for me. Thank you so much and congratulations again.
Thank you for your comments. Very kind comments.
Thank you.
Okay, moving over our next guest and back to attendee. Okay, do we have Motunraya?
Yeah, hi everybody.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Hi guys. Thank you so much for telling such a beautiful, beautiful story that needs to be told. My name is Motunraya. This film is actually very special to me because in 2017, I went to, I was in Maiduguri I went to IDP camp. Yeah. I went there to volunteer. So thank you for telling such a beautiful and interesting story. My question is for Desmond. What were some production issues you had before, during, and after the process of making this film? And my question for Anthonieta, I don't know if I pronounced your name right. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. Okay. Do you actually speak Hausa, or did you have to learn for this role? Because it was phenomenal to just hear you guys just just speaking, no accent, nothing. But are you a native speaker, or did you learn it just for this role? And just so you know, you killed the role. Absolutely brilliant acting. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, those are my questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Anthonieta. I'll come after.
Okay, so if I speak Hausa, well, before I went on the set, I would easily and gladly have said, yes, I do speak Hausa. But when I got on set, the kind of Hausa we had to speak, which is the more traditional, because what I spoke was more of the everyday market language, but I had to do a lot of learning when it comes to the language. I had to learn more of Hausa, and then Fulfulde, that's Fulani, I also had to learn Fulani. So yes, I speak Hausa, but my Hausa is not as great as the one I spoke in the movie. And no, I'm not a native of that region. I'm actually from the southern part of Nigeria.
Okay, well, good job. I couldn't tell the accent. My friends are Hausa, so I was waiting to hear it, but I didn't quite catch them. So good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Motunraya, thanks very much. Just to respond to your question, issues pre, during, and post-production. Primarily the standout issue leading up to production, even before we rolled camera, was the apprehension of our crew bus, which was transporting our props and costumes, winding its way from the eastern part of the country or from the southwestern part of the country, where we are based, through the east, heading towards Taraba, in the northeast, and getting apprehended, at a checkpoint, and upon an inspection, them seeing the costumes and the props and all that, which we had tried to make as authentic as possible, which was construed, by some of the locals who were present at the scene, that these crew members on the bus were actually the insurgents who had attacked their village a couple of days prior. And unfortunately, a jungle justice immediately ensued. They had started to put tires around their necks and were about to burn them. And it was, it was hair-raising. And we were just so fortunate that we managed, frantically to make calls around the security apparatus and actually get those young men evacuated from that location for their own safety into a police cell where they spent 1 week while the police was trying to unravel how and why, these boys, were causing such consternation and what they were doing with these items. So we couldn't, we were about to shoot. We couldn't start the film. We couldn't start production. We actually had to wait 1 week with the entire cast and crew already in Taraba State waiting for those young men to be released before we could commence production of the MILKMAID. But it was a very close shave, and anything, absolutely anything that could have happened to them. So that was very, very traumatic for the production. During the production, fortunately, nothing so much directly. Fortunately, there was an incident taking place in one of the villages proximate to where we were shooting, in which one of the attacks, by some of the herdsmen was taking place on the village. We were not aware of it, and I was grateful that we weren't, because we would have had to stop shooting immediately for the safety of cast and crew, and that again, very disruptive. And then just some of the sets that we built, where we were, we had built to great cost, at great cost, a very elaborate and detailed, wonderful insurgents camp base, which had been done by a very wonderful production designer, but again, that's met with the ire of some of the security forces who almost accused us of actually using that to train terrorists. So we had to strike that down and at great cost and rebuild it somewhere else. That was extremely disruptive, for us as production. So we were there for 3 months shooting the film, and it was far longer than we anticipated because of some of these issues.
So how did that play into your funding? Did you have to get like extra funding to be able to finish the project, or did you like have enough funding already to be able to extend? Did you foresee that ahead of time?
Well, thankfully, my indefatigable executive producer is here on this video.
Hi.
As to whether, we didn't, we hadn't planned for that. I mean, we did have a certain amount of contingency in the budget, but certainly not to cover that. So yes, we did have to raise additional funding. It knows very well.
Okay. You kind of broke out, so we didn't really hear your answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was saying that, sorry, internet connection here might be a bit patchy, but yes, we did have to raise additional funding because we had a contingency in the budget, but not to cover that amount of disruption. So as I was saying, as Seun, the executive producer, knows very well, yes, we did have to raise additional funding, to get the film completed.
Well, thank you guys for answering my questions. Good job, cast and crew. Thank you, Alex, for bringing this and giving us the opportunity to see. Kudos to Yinka for the cinematography. It was absolutely beautiful. I know he or she is not here, but thank you. I'm gonna let the next person come on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
While we're doing that, I'll just quickly mention, the connection between Desmond and Seun, for those who don't know, is that they were high school buddies. So there's a long-standing relationship which came out beautifully in the making of this film.
I'm bringing over Milena because Gary wants me to actually ask his question directly. So I'm going to ask that while Milena is coming over. What is the main American nonprofit that tries to educate the public about this dreadful situation, and is it getting better or worse in the last few years?
Is that her?
Is there an American nonprofit that's particularly active and involved, in terms of getting the world really educated about what's happening?
Let me take a stab at that, but I'm not, to answer the question directly, I'm not aware if there's one specific nonprofit that is assigned to that. But to my surprise, I recently, about a month ago, was listening to a committee from the House of Representatives, Tom Lantos committee, which is sort of charged with going after human rights, and they've taken this issue up, in a big way. Interestingly, the co-chair of that committee in the House of Reps is actually Representative Chris Smith, who actually is from my own district here in New Jersey. And, you know, his name, when I was watching the thing, struck me that this is the name of the person whose sign hangs above my dry cleaners. You know, so his office is right upstairs from my dry cleaners. So I went and made an appointment. I'm yet to see him, but it's very interesting that they've been interested in Nigeria and all the conflicts that are going on there, not just the insurgency, but some of the headsman issues. So that's one group that has been looking into this from the Congress.
And I'll just add to that. Certainly out of the research, I did see that a lot of the humanitarian organizations who actually facilitated some of the survivor accounts that that I read were actually a number of American churches who actually were providing amelioration initiatives to the survivors of the insurgency. And so yeah, so in terms of the U.S. nexus, what I seem to see from the research was a number of missionary activities just to try and rehabilitate and provide some level of sustenance for the victims by some American religious organizations.
Milena, if you're out there, jump on in. Maybe not. Let me see. I'll ask her to unmute. In the meantime, there's another question that I was asked to ask. So as far as the script, the female perspective here is refreshing and amazing. I was rather expecting to see a female co-writer or something. But being that this is still very much a modern day scenario, how did you gain such a perspective?
Well, certainly I still have to go back to that word, the research. I really did try to do as much research as possible and hopefully use whatever tools and inclinations I have as a writer to get into the minds of all the characters involved in that sort of setting. So that was just it.
Okay, I have one last one from, actually, I'm gonna bring back over Dayo, and he's got another question that should, I guess this will be our last question, so let's bring him back over. Hello again. Unmute yourself.
After 1 year of Zooming, you think I know how to do this now. Yeah. Thanks again, guys, for accommodating me. I just wanted to ask Desmond. First of all, I thought the cinematography was just phenomenal. It's a thing of beauty to behold. And I wanted to find out from you, what was that collaboration like with you and your DP? And also, in terms of the acting, I probably can say that this is probably one of the first few, films from Nollywood that I can watch where people are not screaming at each other all the time. I'm sorry to say that, and when you consider the subject matter, this is one of those films that could actually lend to that. But you humanize these characters, even though, they seem to have taken a path that, it's against every human decency, but you find a way to humanize them. And so I wanted to ask you, how much of that did you plan going in so that your characters are not, these caricature characters that are just screaming at everybody all the time, and also the collaboration between you and your DP. And by the way, you guys give my regards to Pat Nebo. We used to kick around in Nollywood in the mid-90s before I left Nigeria. Yes, I was kind of there when Nollywood started. Please give my regards to him.
I certainly will. Thank you very much. I mean, Yinka Edwards obviously is one of the foremost, if not the foremost cinematographer in Nigeria. He started out with a number of prominent Nigerian productions and has since progressed from there. He lives in the UK I think he's even won an award at BAFTA.
BAFTA, right?
Joint cinematographer. So I think I was someone I've wanted to work with for quite some time, just simply because he's obviously very, very progressive minded. He's very ambitious. Technically, he likes to push the envelope, and he doesn't just get involved in the technical side of things from a cinematography point of view. He really likes to delve into the story creatively and try and see how he can use cinematography to render and interpret every single aspect of the story, of the narrative, of the characterization. So certainly the sort of mind that I was very, very keen to work with, since I also have the same inclination. Once the script was ready, I sent him the script, and we had several detailed conversations between Lagos and London, where he's based, or Manchester rather, where he's based, just in terms of trying to realize the story to the fullest extent possible. Fortunately, he was familiar to some extent with Taraba State. He had done some work with a non-profit in Taraba State, so he was very, very keen to capture all the beautiful locations he was familiar with, particularly in the setting of this kind of film. So very, very, glad to have had him on board, and thank you very much for your comments on his work. I thought he did a fantastic job, extremely committed, extremely dedicated, as Anthonieta, I'm sure, would testify to on the production. So that was very, very, good for us as a film. In terms of the acting, Nollywood does have a style in terms of acting, and to be fair, that style to some extent is deliberate. They actually want to have those characterizations that to some extent are very broad, and very in your face, and that is not necessarily my style. And I wanted, I guess I just naturally gravitated in terms of the pitch of the performances, towards what I felt to be authentic to the characters in the story, and I try to share that as much as possible with the actors and actresses of the production.
Again, really very well done. Thank you so much. And Anthonieta, congratulations. You were fantastic. I mean, to think that this was your debut, the sky is not even the limit. So I just say, keep pushing the limits, man. You were fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, so I wanted to bring in one last person. Carmen, are you able to turn on your video? Yes, perfect. And your mic.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that and was so impressed. I've done research for a long time on the Hausa film industry, Kannywood, and I saw a few Kannywood actors like Mariam Booth and Isabel Oja there, and I was just wondering what kind of collaboration and participation you got from Kannywood on this.
Great question. Not that much, to be honest. I mean, even though Taraba State is in the north, it's quite detached geographically from Kannywood, which is, as you know, headquartered in Kano. And we did try to get a few more Kannywood actors involved in production. I think there was maybe a certain amount of reticence based on the subject matter. But kudos to Mariam Booth, who took the bull by the horns and felt that moved by the story, that she really felt that she wanted to be a part of what we were doing. She came in, and I guess her performance speaks for itself. But yes, not that much connection and collaboration with Kannywood, apart from Mariam Booth and Isabel.
So, quick follow-up question on that. There's this ongoing question about the conflation of Nigerian cinema and Nollywood. And there are some directors in particular who are very careful to say that they are not Nollywood. And I wondered, as a sort of follow-up to Bayo's question, for Desmond, how where you see yourself fitting. I mean, obviously, we've watched the film, so we can see your pacing and style. But do you consider yourself part of Nollywood? And then for Anthonieta, coming from a theater background, and presumably a face on the strength of this performance that we will see more in Nigerian film, where you see yourself fitting, going forward?
Well, Am I part of Nollywood? I'm a Nigerian filmmaker. Am I part of Nollywood? Technically, if you call the Nigerian filmmaking industry Nollywood. In reality, probably not, because if you spoke to the stalwarts in Hollywood, I mentioned my name, nobody would know me, basically. So to that extent, I don't think I can claim to be an integral part of Hollywood. I'm not that integrated with the social structure, with the professional structure to a certain extent, because a lot of our cast, lots of our crew, particularly, are taken from what you would call Nollywood. So in that respect, yes. But you know, I wouldn't say I'm exactly a card-carrying, you know, member of Nollywood, you know, with sort of prominence that a lot of other people have, you know, in that world.
Anthonieta?
Okay, so right from when I was a little girl, I've always wanted to be part of Nollywood. I've wanted to be an actress. So yes, I don't mind Nollywood, but because I have a more global vision now, I always refer to myself as a Nigerian actress because I'm more open to things internationally, not.
Your audio is cutting out a little bit. Sorry. I just want to make sure we can get your full answer.
Okay, can you hear me
now? Try coming a little closer to your mic if you can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
From time I wanted to be involved.
Sorry, it's still it's still giving us issues.
If I can paraphrase, I think you were saying that you always wanted to be part of Nollywood, but now see yourself as a more, you know, have a more global view. And I think it's an interesting, you know, maybe an interesting follow-up to that is what this film, and this is, let me just throw this out to all three of you, how you see this film moving Nigerian film, the Nigerian cinema industry forward in terms of perceptions of the range of stories and the range of styles that are that can come out of Nigeria.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a positive. I mean, we're already seeing some, you know, some headwinds in terms of how this kind of needs to expand the expectation level from Nollywood and Nigerian film. So, you know, I think with this being given the prominence that, you know, has ensued so far and hopefully would continue, people will have to expand their expectations in terms of, you know, Nigerian film and Nollywood, in terms of, you know, production value, in terms of budget, in terms of the kind of spend on these films, and the kind of remuneration also for the film. So, you know, I think it's a good thing for the industry, you know, allowing it to expand and really, you know, fill out its wings and so.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, let's face it, in Nollywood, people typically don't really want to address this sort of stories. They feel they are possibly not bankable enough at the box office. And another sense is that, you know, Nigerian viewers already go through such stressful lives, you live in this part of the world, that the last thing they need to do is to get into the cinema house and be a part of, you know, this sort of narrative. But I think for us, you know, as a production team, you know, myself and Seun, you know, we took a decision that, you know, we have to tell these sort of stories. We can't, apart from the situation itself, which we would like to draw attention to, you know, through our film, you know, the industry at large can't really grow and really fulfill its full potential if, you know, we're only, you know, churning out, you know, comedies and romance dramas and all that, which have their place. But for a full-rounded, you know, industry, you know, we need particularly to have, you know, stories that have some element of, you know, social commentary, you know, to them. You know, so although people may have been sitting on the fence, certainly, you know, I think from some of the prominence that the film has been able to garner just by virtue of its selection to represent Nigeria, I think certainly people will be far more attracted to the notion of shooting these kind of films, you know, for whatever reason, you know, that you know, this, you know, could potentially, you know, help them professionally, as well as, you know, have the added objective of providing light and enlightenment and attention to pertinent issues in the society.
And just to pick up on that, and this is more of a comment, one of the things that struck me when Seun first brought this to my attention was that the relevance in the story about extremism and the consequences, if you will, of how lives and societies are fractured when there's a failure of the state or the government to act, isn't something that's just limited to Nigeria. I mean, the things that we've seen in the US, in DC, on January 6th is a combination of a long period of people being radicalized, and regular everyday people are radicalized. I think, for me, this story doesn't just tell the story of the effects of radicalization in Nigeria, but what is essentially a global story, and how that radicalization extends, whether it's to people growing up middle class in England and ending up in Syria as combatants, or people growing up middle class or working class in Washington State and ending up in Washington DC as insurgents. So it's hopefully something that ends up resonating and having people from both the developing world and for so-called more developed countries thinking about the nature of extremism, which at the end of the day is just an insistence on on holding a position and refusing to admit or permit other other perspectives.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. I think very interesting. You make that analogy to what has recently happened in the United States. And I guess it's just a global phenomenon of people essentially feeling that they've been disenfranchised, whether true or false, and not just having that feeling, but being willing and inclined to take forceful action, to remedy the perceived injustice and all that. And certainly from an African point of view, although this started in Nigeria in 2010, as we all know, it has unfortunately spread almost like coronavirus, to a number of, certainly in the first instance, the countries neighboring Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon have all had their share and continue to have their share. You only have to read the headlines over the last 12 months to see the number of attacks that have taken place in these places. And then, increasingly further up, the West African coast in Burkina Faso and in Mali, and then even further down south, where I didn't envisage it to get to. You have places like Mozambique, and I think in Congo, who have had elements of these sort of ideological attacks. So it's a film that in the MILKMAID we don't mention Nigeria. If you notice, we don't mention Nigeria. We don't mention Boko Haram. To some extent, that is deliberate because unfortunately this is increasingly becoming a global phenomenon under various guises and identities.
I wanted to just throw in a question from Nkechi, which is, what has the reception been like, especially in Nigeria, and what are the distribution plans for the film, both domestically and internationally?
Yeah, okay, I'll take that. Yes, well, the reception in Nigeria has been, for those who have seen it through various virtual and private screenings, has been very, very positive. We haven't had a wide release in Nigeria yet. We're looking to see how soon we can actuate that, but we're not particularly keen, as you may have discerned, on showing the version that was approved to show in Nigeria, simply because it's not in the spirit of our vision, for the film and for the subject matter. And, to some extent, narratively, is not even up to scratch. So we're trying to see how we can have a wide release cinematically in Nigeria. That makes sense for us creatively as a production. But whilst working on that, we also are looking to find a landing spot for the film on the streaming platform, hopefully within the next couple of months.
And so just pick up a little bit on the distribution point. Obviously the coronavirus worldwide is putting a crimp on theatrical releases in every market. And I think that's just a huge shame, because this is a film that really deserves to be seen on the big screen. It's a fantastic film as we've watched it, but I think the cinema experience for this it really brings out a lot of stuff. But there are ongoing conversations that we're having with streamers in the US, ongoing conversations we're having with streamers and other broadcasters in Africa, because it's very important to the team that this film not only be seen outside Nigeria and outside Africa, but that it's seen widely within the continent as well. And as Desmond said, in the next couple of weeks to a month, some of the discussions that we're having should yield some fruit, and we'll be able to bring that out.
Well, I know you guys got up super early to do this with us. So thank you so much for sharing this film with us, for letting us know about how you guys went about making it. And I just really give you the best wishes for your Oscar campaign. It's so exciting to see this film representing Nigeria, and I know the voting is going to happen, I think, next week for the shortlist. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how you guys do, and I really hope that you guys make it, because I would love more people to see this. And so thank you again for joining us at such an early hour, and best of luck.
Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you so much for putting this together, for hosting us. It's been a privilege. It's been an honor. And thank you. And we hope we'll have a continuing conversation in the next couple of weeks. That'd be good.
Indeed. Alex, thank you so much for responding so quickly. Thanks to Disa as well, and everyone at USC for helping us put this on. And I mean, for me, the biggest thanks go to Desmond for having the vision, putting this together, and really executing on an incredible level. Thank you to Seun for a lot of people maybe didn't catch that earlier. Seun is a surgeon by training based here in the US, who happens to be a high school buddy of Desmond. Thank you for showing up for him as a creative and putting your money where your mouth is. And last but not least, Anthonieta, an incredible performance. You've really, I think, just did an amazing job for that, with the role, and a very auspicious start, and we hope to see you in many more roles in the years to come.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alex, especially.
And thank you to everybody. Sorry, Seun. Thank you to everybody for coming out for this show. Sorry to have.
No problem.
And Dayo, thank you.
Thanks.
I was thrilled to get your email about this, and my inbox is an open door for you anytime. So
appreciate it.
I hope that we'll feature films from everyone here in the near future, and hopefully on the big screen.
Excellent. Thank you much. Thanks everybody who stuck out. Those of you on the East Coast, those of you in outside the US, people in LA. We appreciate you, coming on board for this and sticking around for the Q&A. Cheers.
Good night, everyone, and good morning to everyone else in Nigeria. Take care.
Cheers.